but it's never truly ISO.
Yeah.
You got your team that's there with you, and as soon as you feel as if you have to carry by yourself, there's certainly players that put up more shots than other players. That's just the way the game works. But nobody's a one-man show. Not even Bron. I mean,
Yeah.
he's done a very, very good job at it. He's probably closer to anybody at being able to do that, but he's got players around him. He's got an entire roster, an entire coaching staff, and people from decades before coaching him and bringing him into the position of confidence that he's in now, where he can bring just about any team into the playoffs, if not the conference finals or a championship.
Yeah, I mean, and it's an interesting thing when you get up to the elite levels, like NBA, NFL. There are players who are so talented and so strong and so know so much about the game that they can have a larger influence on the game than your average player. But even them, they will say, like Tom Brady, I think I'm sure has said, he knows he's the best, but he also is willing to rely on like the run game in a game, or puts praise on Edelman or any of his receivers for catching the passes he's throwing. We'll take note of the defense when they help him out in a game. And I'm sure he took note of like Adam Vinatieri or any of them, any of his kickers in his career. So it's.
Well, and especially with the example of the Patriots, LeBron hasn't always had an all-star cast surrounding him, but Brady fundamentally has in a way, or they become an all-star cast because he makes them into an all-star cast.
Yeah.
And that's something about Tom that I really, really have always liked, despite the fact that he beats everyone, and I don't like that. He makes everybody on that field better, and he has a certain standard of accountability that can almost be viewed as, irrational, because you've seen clips of him on the sidelines almost yelling at his offensive linemen to do their job, and that sounds really abrupt and harsh, but that's the standard of accountability that he holds them to. And from upstairs you have Bill Belichick, who's probably one of the greatest football coaches of all time. Whatever you want to say about him, he's good at what he does, and a lot of that is because he's able to take a hodgepodge team of players that playing for any other team wouldn't have the same amount of success, but he's able to pull almost anybody and everybody into a space and into an organization, fill them with mission and vision, and then send them off into a field to have a successful season year in and year out.
Yeah, it is one of the amazing things about I think it's really Bill Belichick too, that they can take in like Josh Gordon or any Randy Moss and I think there's some other receiver who is known for being kind of out there.
Right, kind of scratchy.
Yeah, and you get them into the Patriots organization, and they usually don't have problems, or at least they don't have problems out on the field. They always are doing the Patriot brand. It's always the Patriots first. Tom Brady's kind of exceeded that, not so much because he goes out and says, hey, I am the best, but he's gone out onto the field and won 6 Super Bowls or 7 Super Bowls or whatever in the past almost 20 years. He's produced so much that he has become the man, but he hasn't had to say that I am the man.
And I think that's often the case with people who are in the conversation for greatest of all time, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, tennis. The number one never has to say anything. It's always people who are clawing for number two that are trying to get into the GOAT conversation. If you have to talk about yourself, then you're not who you think you are. And that was even the case, I think, on my high school team. Partially because he got a bunch of egotistical 15 to 17-year-old boys, fighting for that number one spot or that number one seed in that tournament, which is natural. But, the guy who was consistently our number one player, his name was Luke, I'll say his name because he's an awesome guy, and he plays for UIW right now. He never talked smack. Never, ever, ever, ever had to talk smack because he was consistently our number one guy. He never had to prove that. He just was, but anybody kind of coming up behind him, they were really, really nice, but they always had something to say, and including me. And I'm not going to count myself out from that conversation. I was probably clawing my way up to like 10th, but but always, fighting for your ego, fighting for your spot on that team, and thinking maybe of yourself a little bit more than the organization or what you represent. And I think that takes on new meaning when we think about how Christ is able to work through different personalities in sports, not only playing for something bigger in terms of an organization, but in terms of a mission that goes beyond people, goes beyond humanity, and that's the gospel. And there's plenty of people at the professional level and at the amateur level in high school or college who represent the person of Christ so well that it has an impact, and I think is a big part in making teams better than they ought to be.